Oh. Do we have an agenda somewhere? I've kind of lost track of agenda docs.
That was my thought as I was I was trying to do some coding on the DocX stuff. It's like, oh, we want to give someone a DocX form, it'll be good. A couple agenda items come to mind. One is prioritizing some forms. We have 2 more we should assign tomorrow. Actually, later today.
We have forms that already exist to be assigned, or we need to come up with 2 more forms.
We need to come up with 2 more forms. And I realize we probably should not have a situation where we're deciding that every week. We might be able to come up with a prioritized queue where we're not having to make individual decisions each time.
Right.
What is this 2 more forms? There are new people coming?
There are 4 lab students that need forms to be assigned to them. I think they're going to probably divide into 2 groups.
Yeah. The other thing that I've got here is that one of the new team members, Derek Donato, he mentioned that
immigration one, right?
Yes, yeah. So I just flagged that as something that we could probably mention. He said, so an immigration placeholder on the mass access site dug up the code I wrote for the I-90 USCIS form to replace a lost or expired green card. It's not by any means completed, but it could help as a starting point. So that's just something else that I was thinking perhaps we could add to that triage form list and maybe make a comment. There's no space in that place for comments, but maybe we can actually just add like a sheet comment. If everybody's happy with that, then we can add that to that.
That I-90, I mean, we just went through this. Is it, do you remember what it is? Is he saying he's actually got an online I-90?
It's an application to replace your green card.
Oh, to replace your green card. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like
some DocAssemble interview for it though, kind of like what we're dealing with Matt, having done some of the hi Eric. Wow, that plot is majestic.
It is. So one thing I was going to suggest is that, I mean, we talked to Derek the other day about, you know, the usual thing isn't for people to not have partners, right?
Right.
I'd love a partner. I mean, maybe I should get on some of these. If I partnered with Derek on that form, then he'd be able to consult on, you know, as we transition it to line up with mass access, if that's what is being suggested. Then we'd have the person there who made it, and we'd have a pair of people programming together.
Because it looks like a pretty, I mean, it's a hefty form.
Yeah.
All immigration stuff is. I bet it would be helpful. I don't know how much program experience he has, but I imagine it's something you could be it would be helpful to have someone like you on. I mean, it's long. It's a long form.
Yeah.
So he said it's not by any means completed, but it could be a starting point for basic immigration questions. So in my understanding, I mean, we'd obviously have to ask him more, but in my understanding, it's basically like what Matt, maybe a little bit less than what Matt had done with the consumer defaults. So there's probably a lot more work that needs to be done on it. But Michelle, I like that idea. I do think that having a partner, at least in the first few weeks, is a really good thing.
And one of the things I was going to bring up is that I really think if like the more eviction moratorium is going to get out there, I do need someone other than Mariah. If I'm going to have my code reviewed. If I'm not going to have my code reviewed, then I can just push changes. But if I'm to have code review, I think I need another partner other than Mariah. She's just too, she's too booked.
Right.
Know? She's
the capacity isn't there.
So, or I mean, I can push with no reviews.
Lance would have apoplexy. we have to review each other's code and run each other's code, even if it's a language change.
Michelle, I didn't realize that you were waiting on. I thought she was doing substantive stuff. I didn't know she was reviewing code. So one of the things is reviewing code. She's also been changing language and stuff, and there are places where she has to add a few questions, but a lot of it is functional stuff, and it's quicker if I do it. But I do want to review that I'm getting the right things done, and that I, just that sanity check. She can do it, but she just doesn't have the time to do it. Is that what you're saying?
The substantive stuff?
No, what you're asking for. That's what I'm trying to figure out, is what you're asking for. Is she has the ability, but she doesn't have the time, or you're looking for something more than what she can do?
If we do it together, she has the ability, and I try and make myself available for that. So not usually, it's me saying, when can we do this? And then we arrange a time, right?
Mhm.
I think she will learn over time how to do it more independently, but I'm okay doing it with her as long as it can get done. But
Right.
you just can't get into the room.
So it's
to get it
time,
done.
really. Right.
Yeah.
So it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
So,
And specifically, you're looking for function.
You want someone to
functional
just
testing.
to see the changes you make. You can make the changes. You just want someone to test them before you push them live, basically.
Yeah.
So it's
and
almost
none
something.
of it's live anyway, but yeah. It's just
Or you
easier. Yeah, I'd like
before
someone
you
who can
watch.
kind of understand a bit about the code, so that they can actually review like the code and be like, wait, this line is missing, this might become a problem, like why, or question like, why is this line missing, right? Or why was this line deleted? So that would be my favorite option.
Your ideal. Yeah.
But barring that, yes, someone who runs the code and makes sure that I haven't had one of my episodes and just pushed just something that doesn't run at all to the server, that would be great. And I do a little description of like what a test would look like. If you were to test it, do it, this way. This is what the functionality that has changed. And if I do that and I do it for like, if I'm like, I have changed the interview so that it's completely ready and now you should test all these different things that I changed, that's a much bigger ask than,
just testing one small
just
thing.
test a thing,
Well, should we check to see if Derek would want to? This could be a twofer. If you guys want to spend a lot of time together.
He seems
But
nice enough. If not, I'll let you know.
Maybe he'd be willing to play that role, and I think carve it out so that it's not that he has to become familiar with the whole form, just that he can be another check on each change to make sure it runs.
Yep. Does he
I think that's probably a better discrete ask.
Does he have the time for that? Because he asked a question in the channel and then like I replied and then and you replied and he didn't reply, and I'm wondering if that's because he doesn't actually have the time. I'm worried that he has less time than Mariah.
I don't know I don't know. Actually, he's an AmeriCorps, so actually I don't know what his day-to-day duties are, or whether he's a attorney AmeriCorps or an undergrad. Do you
I think
happen
he is
to know?
not an attorney.
No, he's an undergrad.
I think at VLP, they're the ones who are probably like doing phone stuff and like kind of advice and basic stuff under the supervision of an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
he's like in the phone queue.
I think my understanding
of
that is what he is. You're correct, Kate. My understanding is that he's also I think a little bit slammed. I don't know why. I just in the back of my mind, I think he's a little bit slammed for the next few weeks. He's got intake basically. He's scheduled for intake.
Yeah.
So maybe not the best partner on this project.
No.
But I think his availability does open up a little bit. So the best thing to do would be to actually reach out to him directly and assess his availability. I think that's the way to go.
Well, the other thing I'm wondering about,
He gets on his calendar all day.
before we go down this route, is to make sure that there already isn't an online form for replacing your,
good point.
Like if USCIS already has
Caroline,
something, I don't think
point.
it makes sense to go do this, right?
I don't think USCIS would have like an interview. They have fillable ones, but I don't think they would have like an interview style one.
Well, they do have interview style for the I-90. They do have an interview style.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and also for we've been doing this for the last couple of years. So they have they're not easy, but you do them and they go right to USCIS. You don't have to print them out and mail them. And I think that's a real advantage.
Yeah, I came in late, but it's been a couple minutes and I still don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Just
Two
say
different
like
Hi,
what?
David.
Hi. Okay, obviously, we're talking about doing something with Michelle to help someone with a thing with a something. You can just tell me what the things
We're
are.
talking about two
Sure.
things.
So we're talking about, first of all, we're talking about what the next forms are that we might put on the list, and the other thing is like, how can we pair people, because you know, for some of the forms that we want to get done, like we were discussing the one Derek mentioned, and I was talking about the eviction moratorium and how like Mariah doesn't really have the bandwidth. So like you know, if I can either push the code as I, you know, make it, or is there someone that I could partner with? Otherwise, I don't think it's getting out. But sorry, that they were related, and but they're confusing.
So we're talking about the I-90 immigration form and then pairing. Got you. That's all I needed.
Caroline, this was a really good check because it seems that they have an online form.
Yeah, so I wonder why he started the interview. Maybe we should ask and see if there's some extra thing that like.
Well, yeah. Kate, I think he said he started a while ago.
Oh, I see.
And USCIS is moving. You know how it is. We've moved very quickly. But as these online projects go, people can be working on them for years, and nobody knows about it, and then suddenly they're live, right? Yeah. So I suspect it's been a while since he's done it, and then and sometimes people just think, oh, this is a great form, and they never go see if it actually exists already anyway. You know, that just happens sometimes.
I'm gonna go ahead and just butt in and say that's cool. Should we move on to another topic because we have limited time? Yeah.
Okay. Do you still want to reach out to Derek and ask if he's available to be a code review partner? And he's working on another form right now on his own that he might want a partner on as well. So maybe those two forms.
Sure. I think it might be worth coming up with an alternate to him too that I can reach out to if that isn't the case, or to just decide that if he isn't available for that, then like what my next course of action will be, because I don't want to wait till Friday to like weeks pass at this point, right? Like if so.
Michelle, maybe I can help because I'm also working on a form by myself.
Oh yeah? You want to pair up on the pair of forms?
Yeah, sure, I guess. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Cool.
Sounds
awesome.
like a great solution.
Nice.
First meeting time, 2:00 this afternoon. No, that's too late for me.
Remember,
but I wake up at 7, so
schedule.
So let's schedule something. Like, tell me your availability tomorrow, for example, or whenever. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome.
So, okay, I think we probably could pin the form discussion for a second, triage-wise, and if just to check to see if there's any other things we should have on our agenda.
Yes.
Because we could probably do the forms the whole time if we wanted to. Triage.
Another, I think, a thing is that we still need to schedule a 209A discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're waiting, Caroline, right?
We were waiting.
80.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm waiting to hear back. Haven't heard back. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
So I wanted to check in and see if David and Quentin wanted to find a time to meet where we could talk about onboarding and the Trello boards. And Maeve, if you're still available, I'm not sure, but we're not going to have time to have those discussions in this short half hour, whether it's this week or next week or whatever. So like, I think it needs to be a separate meeting.
Yeah, so I'm available for that. I've also scheduled a meeting with Quentin and David, a separate meeting to that, to go over the documentation that I've done. That's going to be, guys, Thursday at 3 p.m. for you guys. That was the time that suited us best. So Jody, I just sort of a doodle for that, but I didn't think that's not really, necessary for you to be on. I didn't want to like waste your time.
I have class till 3:30, so I could do like 4 o'clock on. I don't know if you want.
Well, why don't you resend can you just send her to the existing doodle, and then it's all of our availabilities already. Okay. And then Jody, you can just add your availability to that.
Oh,
cool. I will do that.
Are you going to change the time?
No, I think we're going to have 2 meetings. Is that what it, or did you want to do one?
Yeah, I think because the thing is, it's 2 different concepts, right? The first one is the documentation for those 2 main silos, and then I'm kind of interested in doing a 3rd batch of documentation.
And what was the time we landed on for?
3 o'clock on Thursday.
3 on Thursday.
And I think maximum an hour. Hopefully we'll aim to get it done within, it's basically just pointing you guys in the direction of the documentation and just kind of giving you a high level walkthrough of what we've done. if there's any feedback that you have, then I'm open to making those changes. It's just based primarily on the feedback that we received from the Suffolk team members and conversations with Jody and John, which I said to the people on the call earlier that I am so glad when I was onboarding now with my new firm, it's all stuff that we've done on this project. So like, they're like, you probably don't know about Trello. And I'm like, don't you worry. I got this. So yeah, so
like, I can teach you all about Trello.
Yeah, so that's that call. And then Jody, the call that Jody wants to have, and I think that I need to be on that as well, is the Trello. And maybe Jody, we can actually meet before that one as well, just to kind of firm up some of the things.
Yeah,
it's the Trello and the onboarding.
I feel like we're kind of ready to an extent to do the Trello boards. Like, we've got the plan. Like, remember I drafted out, I wrote out the whole plan of how the movement would be.
Yeah.
But then we just have to kind of decide, like, do we just want to go for it and just kind of like see how it goes? And if Trello starts restricting us because we're having too much automation, like, we kind of just need to pick the best, where we have the biggest bang for our buck, I think, and then just go for it. So, and once we do that, then I think we need to just create an admin account, like a fake admin account that can act as an admin account that can have the board that sets up the boards.
Yeah.
So we just need to like talk about all that. And onboarding, the onboarding process, and what we want that to be now going forward, and who's going to be doing that going forward.
Like, who's going to take ownership of that? That's quite important. And then maybe in that conversation, we can also talk about the management of the volunteers. So dealing with the Trello board managing volunteers and how we're engaging with volunteers who aren't available for stand-up, and how to monitor the progress. Make sure that everyone feels like they're
we need.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got times for those, so we'll find times for those, and we'll have those sessions.
Yeah. So Jody, can you and I meet for a little bit before the meeting, the second meeting that we're going to have, the four of us?
Yes.
Okay. We will be productive. I've just dropped you a message, so you can. I think just let me know if you can see the availability in the doodle. I don't know if you will be able to, and then we'll then set up that second meeting. But for us guys, Quentin and David, it's 3:00 on Thursday.
Yes.
Okay.
I put it on my calendar already.
Okay.
As did I.
Other.
We can use this Zoom link. Let's just do that.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Good call. Are there other agenda items, updates?
I just have to have a quick, Kate, you and I are supposed to meet this week, right?
Yeah, I have us scheduled for Thursday at 11:30.
Okay, somehow it didn't make it into my calendar. Did I thought I sent you a calendar invite for it, and I can't find it in my calendar.
I don't think you sent me a calendar invite. I think we just scheduled it in Slack.
Okay, so I'm going to make sure I put that in 11:30.
I have small pieces of like specific business, but I'm not sure they're overall or organizational business.
They might be. Let's just see if there's other questions, and then maybe. And actually, you said half an hour, but I think we have until 1, unless a lot of people join for the regular stand-up, which I'm not expecting.
I just
mass influx.
I need to ask something, and I can't. Oh yeah. So what are we gonna do about the? Do you want me to just kind of ad lib about the vacate default judgment in housing for the answer? Do you want me to? What do you want to do about that? Or should we talk about that now, or what? That's something that is a kind of a management thing about.
Okay. I mean, I could probably be an SME for that too. What is the question? I remember there was a question about what are the alternatives.
So we have what is it? A motion to dismiss.
Motion to vacate default.
Motion to vacate default judgment in housing. And Gordon says you shouldn't do that if you haven't done an answer. So we've set it up so you have to do an answer. If you haven't done an answer, should we send people to go do MAID, download the PDF, then upload the PDF to the motion to vacate default? Because Gordon says you shouldn't even file this if you don't have the answer. You don't come and bring it later. And that, of course, that was our other thing, was that's the way to get the answer filed in these specific cases.
Right.
So I just want to check with you about if that's what we're going to do.
I think that is a good, because that requires no work. I think that's a good first thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to do, go ahead. Sorry, Quentin.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is MAID does generate discovery, which you won't get, but it doesn't take extra work, I suppose, for the person to do that. So that might be okay. The court's just not going to grant you discovery if you are vacating a default.
So MAID automatically produces discovery.
Right.
Right. Okay, so
yeah, it might. I wonder if that's also region specific. His point about not doing a vacate default unless you've done an answer, because I think the court's going to want to know what's your substantive basis for making to getting this vacated. But an answer takes 30 minutes to an hour to do.
Well,
I suspect it's still useful to file it just and say, hey, I'm here, I can do it.
Right. Yeah, I think that, and also remember, hopefully people are going to be on their own time doing it. So we tell them, and we can tell them up front. We can tell them at the beginning of the interview.
Right. You should do an answer also if you want to use this.
So the other thing about this is service. Should we do two versions? One, like you're going to print everything out and take it to the court or mail it to the court or whatever, pending approval from the court on the form. I mean, is that how we should do it?
Versus because we want it to be ready before the court can use it, approve it, you're saying? That's the point.
Right. So you can't file it with the court until the court approves it.
Right.
Right. So we can't tell them right now that they can file it. So should we sort of do two versions?
You know what, though, because that isn't really relevant except for this really small pool of cases where we don't want them to file a motion to dismiss for not being an emergency eviction. And it is an emergency eviction until the middle of October. So I kind of feel that we can release it with just assuming the court's going to approve it before October. And then if they don't, I mean, it almost won't be as, we can change it at that point is my
okay. All right. Okay. That sounds good. I was just waiting to hear on that. So I think that's good. I feel like there's one other thing, but I can't remember what it is. Okay.
So I wanted to bring up again automated organization permissions for GitHub.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should put these on the Trello or something with the due date, or if this is just something to remind about in the meantime until it becomes an issue again, and that's fine.
I'm wondering
what we're supposed to do with that information, right?
Yeah. For decisions we have to make collectively. That's actually a good idea, Michelle, to have a Trello for that. I think we are set on that though, right? I think we can change the permissions globally and we will revisit them on a per repo basis if there's a reason why it shouldn't be made writable by the whole team. I think that's our change that we're gonna make.
Yeah, I think we left saying we were gonna think about it a little more, but I think that that sounds right, because the number of ones where we wouldn't want to just give everyone in the organization access is very small, so we can control it on it's more like the default situation should be giving everyone the same access with a few exceptions. So I think it's better to control it that way.
Okay. Does one of you?
So what access do we want to give everyone to the organization?
Write permissions.
Just write permissions. All right.
Yeah, well, otherwise they can start doing funny things.
Right, that's why
I mean, there are other questions like, do we want to try and make it a practice to lock the master branch so you always need a review and stuff like that? But I know that's it's just that, for example, it's like people, pushing other forms to to the MA virtual courts wouldn't have happened if that were the case. And, you know, people are afraid to change master. For some people, it's more comfortable because they know they can't mess up master.
I do think we have to consider, though, like where people start out is probably just, we want them to get really comfortable with pushing changes really early until it's pretty stable form, and then probably taking more care. But
I've changed the permissions to write
on the MA virtual court repository specifically to address that. This is an issue.
Okay.
Change the base permissions for the lab organization to write.
Lab members, the organization members.
The organization, yes. So it affects members and excludes outside collaborators.
Yep. Though you can do outside, I mean, I don't know.
You can give them,
yeah,
their own
collaborators too. But another question is, when does Rose get back? Because it actually wasn't answered last time. I just said.
Oh, so Rose is back. She got back to me, and so we can, if we first things first is. What instruction sheet do we want her to look at? If you give me a copy of that, I'll give that to her. And then when I do that, I'll ask her about the other things. And what are the other things?
Can we, if we're talking instruction sheets, can we probably, and ask her to do 2 columns?
Yeah. Yeah. If we have like a base where we're like, this is sort of what we're working with.
Can we just send her the instruction sheet for 209A?
Yeah. Can someone just drop me a exported version in Slack, and then I'll just forward it over to her?
When you say exported, do you mean already filled in, not with the, not a Jinja docx?
Not a Jinja, yeah, just what it looks like, because I'm sure she'll want to start from scratch.
Oops, got a message. Okay, the design stuff, it'd be good to understand kind of what capacity she has.
Okay, so then that's what I'll frame it. I'll say, here's this, and then we're curious what your interest / capacity is for any other projects. Yeah. What's the shape of that generally, though, that we're thinking, so it's not just an entirely blank.
Were there things that you had in mind, Michelle?
Yes, that we've talked about before. It's not just made up out of my head.
No, I'm not. I'm just wondering what they are.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm just teaching. Interview copying or name editing. So editing the names, or like what an interviewing copying interface would look like, where we can put those on the page that would be reasonable.
I don't know what that means.
What do you mean by that?
So when a user has a list of their interviews, right? We're trying to make it so that
okay. So you're talking about
when they say they've logged in, they have an account.
Right, like they can see a list of their interviews. If they want to copy them, how should that work?
Gotcha.
If they want to edit the name to make them more clear, how might that work? Right, there are certain restrictions there, but.
She actually did do a mock-up on part of the back end at one point too. So.
Be good to see that.
Yeah, it was in the other links in her original deck, but I think we just sort of ignored it because we weren't ready for it yet. So yeah, we should revisit that.
Okay, if you could link that or something.
I'll try to find
that. We were talking about that one the other day.
I think it included like a copy your interview session, because that's like we hadn't thought of yet at that point.
Yeah, but it had the general back end bit, so you might be able to infer from that or tweak upon top of that.
Something to know about Rose is, right, like probably at the very beginning of COVID, her company wasn't very busy, but I'm imagining just like that they have a lot of demand because a lot of people they have to move stuff online.
Yeah.
That's why the questions though, right?
And I think we're just, the way I was looking at it was because I know designers can get attached to projects, and I wanted to give her right of first refusal. So we're entirely fine with her being refusing.
Yeah.
We just as priority of place. She just has priority of place, so she can decide.
And there are other things like general design. We were talking about, I think, Quentin, you brought up the other day about styling the interview, like having a consistent style for all the interviews that is a bit more comfortable and is a bit more accessible, inclusive than the current one we have. And then there are other ones that I have that are bee in my bonnet about like the download flow and designing that experience. Download / emailing / whatever. And so there's
Okay,
very
that gives me the
right,
shape.
so-
That gives me the shape. I just need the shape to be
You
able to
said
describe.
shakes. I was like, why?
Shakes? No, it doesn't give me the shakes.
In that
Filled
vein, there
with
was
fear
just
at the idea.
I just wanted to ping that
Yeah.
idea that me and Vinny came up with quite a nice way of doing the court. It was like for the courts, it was something that we thought we could use in the court selector that they had used for their hearing date and time in the generic motion for family law. And that was kind of put on in an icebox, thinking that maybe we can revisit that at some time. So I think that is also, sorry?
Where is that? Did you all document that somewhere?
Well,
inside the form.
it's in their YAML file.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I mean, but you're just saying, like, I don't know what the YAML file is, so like, I
Right.
don't know what that.
No, we have that
should I make an
Google
issue
Doc.
for it?
We have the
Well,
Google Doc for
I
basic
feel like
questions.
Maeve was still explaining, so maybe
sorry.
we could.
So yeah,
Sorry.
so basically, I can't remember what it specifically. It was just it was the way that they dealt with assigning a hearing time and hearing city and stuff like that. They came up with quite an innovative way to do it. And when we were doing their demo, Quentin mentioned that that's quite a nice way in which they structured it, and it might be useful to incorporate that in basic questions for both the hearing time, but also for another flow, which I'm thinking it could have been one of the flows that we have. So just in that vein, Michelle, in terms of kind of revisiting certain flows, I think that that's one that we can look at. So maybe I can
Who
just
was in the
revisit
group
that demo.
again? Who was in the
Vinny and
group?
Mia. It was the generic motion for family law. So if I just have another look at their demo, I can flag it and then maybe just ping on the group and we can decide how to deal with that. Either through an issue or maybe just to document it, to bring it up in that meeting that you're talking about, Michelle.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll do that.
Yeah, that sounds great. And the basic questions in general, I implemented the one that looked like it had a complete
The
decision
interpreter
made.
one. Yeah.
And the other ones, like, I tried to find one that was like, yes, this is a thing we should change, but I just found things that were like, we should discuss this more. I thought there were more of them that were actionable, but I couldn't find them in there. So maybe they're someplace else.
I don't think they are. And that was intended to be a document to discuss, not a to-do list. And so what I was thinking is what you were talking about, Maeve, is to add that question, put the question ID from that YAML
Perfect.
into the basic questions. Because I do think we ought to have a meeting about basic questions. There's another basic question in the beginning, I think, unless you adapt it, it says this interview will be filed securely through the website with the court. And so you know that that's not going to be true for all the interviews. So we need to have a basic questions discussion. And I think it makes sense to have a document so we can have what we're going to talk about before we start changing them.
And just to,
related to that, so Aubrey actually went through.
I was about to
going. Okay.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. I was going to mention. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that probably, I haven't actually looked at it closely, but she did take a pass through, and she said a lot of the issues seemed to be ones that were like general feedback about not the two specific forms Bentley reviewed, but about basic questions and overall style. So maybe those are also good discussion points to add in.
Where's Aubrey's? What document is this that Aubrey's done?
So did she share it with you also, David? I think she shared it.
I was going to talk to you about something else that Aubrey did. She's just amazing and doing all sorts of
totally
stuff.
different thing. Okay. All right.
No, it's quasi related.
Yeah. She had shared. She made editable spreadsheets with the feedback basically in Google Docs.
With the
executive summary of it, I think. So
with the participants spreadsheet, you mean our feedback from the participants? Is that what you're talking about?
Feedback from Bentley's expert review of.
Bentley.
There were two forms we
right.
asked them to review. It was a while ago, and they actually gave us the feedback a while ago. But
I forgot.
We hadn't done that.
Okay.
But to build on that, Aubrey is also thinking about final projects for her coding the law class with me. And she's in the lab, and so she's going to be doing the sort of things we were already doing. But she was thinking that for the coding the law, because we have to keep sort of delineated different things, she was thinking it might be nice to either build functions or new basic questions. So to the extent that people have ideas for things that would be useful in either of those. I mean, I sort of imagine new basic questions that use some functions is kind of what I was thinking.
So there's actually a lot of like interesting decisions to make about customizability of basic questions and how to make them adaptable. For example, having this is an example, but a like user name page and a client name page. So the username page says, what's your name? And asks for user 0.name.first, and a client page that asks for client's 0.name.first and says, what is your client's name? And in that way, build flexibility into the built-ins we have. So, I mean, I don't know where she is with her path on that, with, where she is on that path, but.
She's very early, and I bring it up now to flag as something that she's going to be interested in knowing what people think would be useful. And so what I think we'll probably end up doing is coming up with a constellation or a menu of potential things, and then we'll choose a subset of that for her to work on as her final project.
So maybe I don't know if Aubrey will be ready to say like, okay, this is the way to implement it, but maybe what we need to do is think of have a discussion about specific things we already know are things we want to change, which are partly adding new questions, partly changing the wording of existing questions, partly adding flexibility in different ways to make them cover different use cases we didn't think of. And then we'll generate a list of ideas, and we can talk with Aubrey about the way to approach that, whether that's writing a new question, adding functionality. When you said adding functions, David, did you mean like she wanted to write Python? She wants to learn Python to add some functions.
She had a really great idea, which would have been a really fun project. And would have dovetailed with some of the stuff in the class that we're doing. Unfortunately, the court isn't going to let it happen. But she was like, wouldn't it be great if you could put in the docket number and it looked up information and pulled that information in?
That would be super cool.
Be amazing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the subject of scraping data off of the court's websites is a perennial
Like that.
Yeah, we've run into that.
We actually had that as one of our topics for the
hackathon.
The hackathon. So my thought around the work around that was we could just have people enter in. We don't do a screen scraping in a way that violates their terms of use. It's one person, one lookup, and we have the person enter in. They get
their own document
see
number.
The same. Know the CAPTCHA. They type in the CAPTCHA, which is the barrier that the court has.
So would you do it as
Basically, we're doing a pop-up where you type in the information. We're going to pull the information back in a structured way, but it's like you're interacting with it, not a scraper.
Okay, that might be a good workaround.
I mean, at that point,
you're moving your lips, but we can't hear.
At that point, it would scrape it. I mean, that would be okay, right? If we got the information off of the page at that point.
I'm fairly sure that the restrictions are on bulk data collection. That's what I believe.
If that's what it says.
Then at that point, we could scrape it and get their answers for sure. I haven't worked with Selenium before, but we could try that. I know Puppeteer. That's what I know real well. I
want to review the terms.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of
access to the Massachusetts eAccess site by a site data harvester or similar software intended to discover or extract data from a website through automated repetitive querying for the purpose of collecting such data is prohibited.
So I don't think it would be for the collection of the data. It would be for like using it. Yeah. I mean, this is a kind of question that is sensitive with the court, but if we figure out how to limit the scope of our question, we might be able to get a good affirmative response back. Because I don't think we're violating the spirit of their terms at all if we do this way. So we have to be careful that we ask it the right way such that no one gets worried and sets up a barrier that they don't really care about. I think, I don't want to violate their terms of use because that would not be good for our relationship with them.
I mean, it also says site provides access to basic case information. It can be viewed by members of the public, parties, researchers, journalists. So like if they're letting it be viewed by researchers and they understand that, to me that like contemplates some degree of I'm looking at a whole bunch of things and pulling stuff.
Yeah, in my experience with dealing with the court on research questions, we get a special writer and say, hey, we're going to have someone doing a bunch of stuff. I think that's the repetitive bit. A lot rides on that repetitive language. You could definitely make an argument that it's not repetitive. And if you infer that the reason they have that is because they're worried about either people getting access to information they shouldn't or slowing down their servers by doing a lot, then you can say, well, this is not going to do that. But it is sensitive. We just need to be aware of that.
And you'd only be pulling from the public portion, not the attorney's portion, right? I mean, yeah, you can't pull from the attorneys.
Yeah.
And if they
Person's not an attorney.
And if they explicitly told us the limits for their servers, we could throttle what we do in case something becomes.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm not sure all of their, as Quentin says, we have to be careful about how we ask it so they don't put down a line, which is not really the reason. I have to keep reminding, and I will be very diplomatic as this is recorded, although I'm not very good at putting these videos up. Yeah, no, never mind. Go on.
Okay. But that's, you know, whatever, that's understandable. If it can be like an unnerving question. So okay.
Yeah, it's just something sensitive that we'll just need to be carefully navigate.
So when do we want to have that conversation about basic questions, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I think we need a little bit of work done in advance to do some brainstorming, probably. I'm looking at the feedback that Aubrey collated, and it's pretty straightforward. Actually, we could probably just read through that and see. She did a nice job of making it a summary. That could be part of that meeting. That doesn't have to be. I moved it into the Suffolk Lit Lab, and then I changed ownership to that, and I moved it into the doc assembly line folder in the Google Drive, so everyone should be able to access it.
Yep. Okay. Do we want to? Are you saying
a week enough?
About it now, or?
I don't think we can talk about it now, but I think if we reserved, it's probably going to be a repeat conversation. We probably won't solve everything in one go. Do we want to try to reserve a half hour next week to do that?
Sure. That sounds good to me.
And so the pre-work that needs to be done is to identify more things to talk about and maybe propose solutions that we can discuss them in a more structured way. So Michelle, did you have some of those ideas? I know Caroline, it sounds like you have, and they might already be captured in that other, I actually don't know where they're captured. So but I remember seeing a document we were editing together that had some of these ideas, right?
It was called Basic Questions. So, or at least the one that Maeve made was that. Can we just take different sections of that document and just put our notes there so that if, you know, we're not present or for whatever reason, like at least that work won't be lost?
Yeah, so is that enough for us? It probably is. I'm guessing it's enough. We've had one conversation on some of them. We just have to make sure they're all actionable, as you pointed out. Some of them weren't actionable yet. So do we need to add more ideas to that list, or do we think it's enough for us to discuss by next week?
Well, I thought we were going to individually try and add more ideas. We were going to try and look at these.
That's what I wanted to make clear, is that if we're having people add more ideas, not just respond to the ideas there.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little, we have one that says basic questions that need readability edits. Is there one that's called basic questions?
I'm going to pull it up what I've got now. It's in the admin channel, I think it should be.
It's in the channel?
Yeah, I usually put the name of the doc. So it's
I see.
Or maybe I pinned it as well. Let me have a look. It is in the Google. So basically, all the docs are in the Google Drive. Do you know what? It's just the one that you.
It's just the readability edits now. Maybe
I'm just having a look to see if I added those points in there. No, it's not in that one. Okay, let me have a look on the Google Drive, and then I'll drop it in.
Oh, there's one that's pinned. Oh,
so how about we make one thread and just post the relevant documents on there?
There's one that's from me to Maeve that's pinned in assembly line admin. That's the one, I think that's the one that's basic questions readability edits.
Yeah.
Oh, here, I got basic questions over here. This is the one that I was talking about. Oh, no, it's the
It's
same
under
one. No, you're
style
right,
guides.
Caroline. It's the same one.
Okay, all right.
Cool, cool,
Okay.
cool.
And that looks like the one that you were working in, Michelle, because it has the interpreter
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it's called readability edit. So that's a smaller scope than what we're talking
Yeah.
about, because we're saying new questions, changes. So we're not talking about solutions exactly. We're saying what do we want it to look like, and then we probably should leave the tech part out of that for like how we implement it till later.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have comments to make on making new questions like the one I just described, where there's one for the user and one for the client. I don't know if that is a new question or if that is a technical thing. So
I'm saying we don't have to decide that. Let's
okay, so
talk
I can
about what
just
the
write them
behavior
in
is we want someone to be able to see. So in that case, it would be we want someone to be able to use it for themselves or if they're helping somebody else, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the level we should probably make choices about, I think.
And
I
we
will do my best
probably,
to write at that
I did
level.
not do it, but I suspect that there are issues on basic questions in GitHub. So I'm happy to go through that and add that. So this doesn't have to be
Nice.
readability. This should just be basic questions. We can just change the title to basic questions.
Okay.
And,
Well,
which,
let's make something less obscure. Questions
okay.
is
Yeah,
confusing. So
I'm
basic
not, I don't care
questions,
what
funny,
it is,
but,
but I'm thinking,
changes, additions. Does that seem
Yeah.
to capture it? Those are the two things, changes and
is
additions.
this the alternative? Whoops.
And I'll call it proposed.
That's for you and for Kate, but don't derail this
Basic
convo.
questions development. I don't know.
So actually, David, I'll send you the right link for that, which is going to be changing today, soon.
Wait, is that
Oh, the
not
link is the same, I think. It has like an ID, so it should be okay. I changed the title.
Okay, so do you want me to go through the GitHub thing and add those issues that are specific? We're talking about features and we're talking about behavior.
Yeah, we're talking about at that level right now. And it could get down to like, okay, let's narrow this down to have it be actionable. And it's like we get to the level of language we want it to have too. That seems like they're both possible.
Well, they're pretty integral, really.
Yeah, that is mostly, I guess, the kind of changes we're talking about are language related. So do we want to move issues into this document or move the document into issues? And we could create a milestone and we could still discuss it on GitHub that way.
If we could, if we move the document into issues, does that mean it's how does that work?
We would separate out the different topics that we're kind of brainstorming in here, create an issue for each topic that didn't have a topic yet. An issue, sorry.
An issue for, so, but and then they'd be labeled or something so that you could go through them.
I think it might be a bit premature to put it into issues because a lot of times there's crosstalk between the different items, and then like you're cross posting on different issues, and it gets, I think it might be good to have a mess in a Google document for a little bit until we have our topics well outlined so that they are clearly delineated and easy to keep, mostly separate from each other.
I think that's a good perspective. Any other thoughts? Which way it makes sense?
I think I agree with Michelle, because to have it in one spot, kind of clarify those thoughts and ideas, and then move it across.
All right.
And then the conversations can continue there. I just mean, we can start with.
Yeah, okay. That seems like a good distinction then. So then the question is, do we want to move issues in, or for the ones that already are issues, we have two kinds of organization techniques we could use. We could use labels or milestones. Probably labels make the most sense at this point.
Well, I think a milestone for basic questions kind of makes sense, right? As like an overarching goal, as opposed to, these are specific issues with a tag that like this one's with basic questions, this one's with basic questions. Like they're all working towards this one goal, as opposed to like, I have to keep track that this one is a bug, Yeah,
I mean, either way, they're a tag you can click on to see. And I guess the difference is milestone sounds like these are the things we're going to work on now versus later. So the question is, do we want to keep them in one big milestone and then we're going to not be able to work on them all as one milestone. We're going to probably have to peel them off to make them into smaller milestones that are more achievable, like something more like a sprint rather than here's everything we want and we'll do it over the course of a month. So we can start out as a milestone and then make 2 milestones out of it, or 3, or whatever we need. Or labels. Maybe I'm getting too specific here now. But I just want to give some direction, because Caroline, you were about to go into look at the issues. So we're just trying to figure out what to do with them. So
I think tagging them somehow, whatever way we decide is fine.
So, well, okay, let's use a milestone for that, I guess. I'll make it now, and then we'll make 2 milestones out of it at some point. So.
Okay.
So what we're doing is adding a milestone to GitHub, and everything that's a basic questions issue gets a milestone tag for basic questions. And then what are we changing the Google Doc into issues?
We're going to wait for that, I think, until we've discussed them. And some of them might be ready to turn into issues. Some of them might not be, I think.
Oh, we're going to discuss the Google Doc. Are we going to add to the Google? So when we look at this, getting ready for the conversation next week, what are we going to add to if people have things that need to be added?
I'm going to link, we're going to add to the Google Doc. We're going to link the existing issues to the milestone. Gotcha. And we won't copy anything from issues to the Google Doc, because eventually we want it all in issues.
Right, but are we gonna, so if they're both places, then if it already exists in issues, we can link from the Google Doc to the issue.
Correct, that's a good point. And I just made a link to the milestone in the Google Doc. So now it will be a way to be able to see that they're related.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll make a time for a meeting about that. We said for next week.
I think we could probably carve out a half hour of this meeting for that, maybe. And maybe that will help us keep the right level of granularity for them. Maybe it won't. We'll see.
But okay, yeah.
Unless people want
constraints are good.
Meeting. What's that?
Constraints
are good.
Yeah.
So other than that,
I'm not hearing that we have a lot of other things that are a higher priority yet, at least for our agenda next week. So that's why it seems like
okay. I feel like such a nag, but like I still haven't gotten any feedback yet on the behavior for the signature.
Signature.
Oh,
I didn't realize you hadn't. Quentin and I talked about it earlier today. I didn't realize we hadn't brought it up in this meeting yet. Quentin, do you want to?
Oh no, that sounds terrible.
No, we were saying we were feeling bad that no one had come back to you with the decision. I think that the answer is we want this new behavior. Is it in any running forms right now? I think that's the first thing, is to start out small and
eviction moratorium.
Eviction moratorium, isn't it?
Okay.
But not a live form.
But not any live.
That wasn't my plan.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you want to test it.
So what is the decision that we need to make, Michelle?
What?
We're ready to make. What's the decision we need to make that we're ready to make? Because I think before we switch it.
Is that the MVP behavior? You just want
to know whether you can use it in this form. And I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
And that will help us decide how to roll it out to more.
Okay.
I didn't realize that was that was the scope of your question.
Isn't it that you want it tested, right? It's the scope, but it's also you want it tested.
Yes, I would love to have people test it, but if it doesn't have MVP behavior, then there's no point in testing.
Yeah, we're fine with the behavior. I think the question was about the behavior. The behavior then allows to put it in a form and for us to test it.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
From which we will learn whether or not it actually is the behavior we want.
Okay.
And I can I can also Mariah had a point that the users should be, the people signing should be the ones putting the contact information in for the court, their own contact information, because the user might not be aware that they have DB and privacy and impounded information that they don't want shared with the court or something, don't want shared on the forms or whatever.
Did you do
So,
that?
No, because
That's a
that was
nice
that
idea,
was a
but-
discussion from yesterday.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So a link to sign a form is not a very high bandwidth form of communication. So I feel like that might be something that's better for the people who are signing together. They need to have some discussion before they just get a link to say, sign this court document that I'm going to put your name on.
It's outside of the interview. Yeah,
I don't think the interview is the scope to do it,
right.
because it's just too much information you're trying to squeeze into a format
No.
that's not designed for it.
What I mean, like, no,
It seems like if it's going to add any, I understand, Michelle, because you asked about this before Mariah told
I'm
me
not
that
sure I've made it clear. So the proposed UI would be the link gets sent out to whatever device, the signer goes on, they say, I'm willing to sign. It says, what contact information do you want to give the court? If that is a desired part of the information that the designer wants, that the coder wants, and then it asks for their signature. That's the end.
No, I understand that. I think we did talk about it, and I said, I don't think we need to have that behavior. I do think there's no harm in having it if it's an easy thing to add, but I really, really worry about scope creep, and this starts to sound like something that's just not part of getting a signature.
Okay, I thought it was safety because of impounded information. So if the user doesn't know that they should not share the co-signer's phone number because it should be impounded, then but Kate would know. What do you think, Kate?
This is housing. But go ahead. Sorry.
Housing?
Well, but this is anybody who doesn't want their phone number shared on that level, right? Like if I am a person who is trying to avoid my abuser and I don't want this person who I'm co-signing with to put my phone number in a place of public record, because I don't have access to it.
I mean, I think at some point, if your information's impounded, you have to take the steps and, I don't know, do it yourself.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this is a default. I mean, this is a motion to vacate a default judgment on an address. So, I mean, if you're being evicted from an address, you live there.
So,
and when you sign,
the contact information is the phone number and email, for example. If the person is an abused person, they are doing this housing thing. From what I understand, I don't know if housing stuff is public record, but I thought it was.
It is.
And then my name as a victim is going on this public record, but I wouldn't want it to. I would give them a different phone number to put on a public record. But this is the record to which the signature was sent. We said that the signature and the court contact information should not be the same, and that the user is the person who can put in that information.
I have to go to my unit meeting anyway.
Okay. Well,
Hi, Kate.
okay.
Bye.
Hi, Kate.
Yeah, Michelle, I think it's a great feature. I think it's a nice.
As long as
thing
it's
to
not
add
a
in.
safety, as long as it's not a safety problem, then I'll do whatever. Like, it
Everything
doesn't
could
matter.
potentially be. So there's every part of the form that could potentially include some sensitive information. You have to write down in a free text field a reason why you shouldn't be evicted. So I would not feel comfortable signing a document if I hadn't had a conversation with the other person who was generating it. And the question is do we need to create a mechanism to formally say, I'm going to get this information and approve it? And is that beyond I'm reviewing the document that would presumably already have those fields filled in, right? In the draft that you get to see before you sign it.
Right. So,
well, the way that it is
worry
now,
about adding too many features to handle different scenarios when there's a really appropriate way to handle this, which is the people talk together before they complete the document.
I think that's for MVP. You can tell the user to get in touch with all the people that are going to be co-signing and make sure that it's safe for them to do it. I mean, and have those directions, whether people read or not. Because this is beyond what would happen if everybody's living together anyway. I think this is something that happens when you file stuff at court.
So two
It seems like a bigger app.
points.
Say like sign
Yeah.
this Word document that you're putting your name on, rather than like get my information correct on the form. But
Yeah. So
if
2
it's easy
points.
to add and you feel good about the scope of testing and taking time to add it, then that's okay. But every additional feature has a cost that's more than the time to implement it.
So what I need to do right now is switch, because the preview is being sent before the user puts in the contact information. So that doesn't get added to the preview right now, but
I think you've
can try
answered
and
it
make
though,
it
which
so
is you have to switch some behavior. So it sounds like it might not be a good scope to change.
Right. No,
But-
no. That's not what I said. I said, if I want to do it not this way, if I don't want to do it by sending it to the signer, then I need to switch it so that the information gets put into the preview, which means that the user needs to give the contact information for the co-signers before they're kind of ready to send it. But if that's, I'm going to have to change behavior one way or another. So you just tell me which way.
So I think it's two. So one, I just want to disentangle that. Some folks have been focusing on the behavior and thinking about it only in the context of the specific form, whereas I think Michelle wants to think about the general. So I just wanted to just sort of disentangle that. And then I think Quentin's point is very well taken, and this was Caroline's points as well. If you sort of walk back to like if it's a piece of paper that we were dealing with, in the end, you're putting the signature on that piece of paper based upon what's on the form. So I think to answer Michelle, your question about behavior is you want to show them the preview, then have them sign it, and the contact information should have been handled in a conversation between the person who is filling out the form.
And the question for the contact information should come before the preview is what you're saying?
Yeah, everything should come before the preview because we want them to basically be sent. So I think we're trying to replicate the part of the workflow from the paper form, which is that if you're signing the paper form, the expectation is that the form has everything on it that you're signing.
Okay.
So that I
All right.
think so I think are we good then? Okay,
That's
cool.
and I think that the idea of like asking for contact information is good, but I'm very mindful of scope creep. That's all.
Yeah, if we think MVP, I don't think it's a safety issue because you should be having the conversation, and by having the form be previewed beforehand, you're making sure that they can see what's being shared.
Yep, I have to change the order of things either way, and I can do it that way if that's the way we want.
Yeah, I think that's
it's editing code either way. So if you want to pick the way that you like best, and that's the way you like best, then that's the way I'll do it.
It makes
All right.
sense to do it that.
okay. Cool. Did Eric? I want to make sure that we've moved into Teaching Tuesday time, and no one else has shown up. So I don't know how I want to deal with that.
Yeah.
We were gonna do Eric was gonna do his demo, right?
Well, I was just gonna like show some bugs or ask some questions. I was looking through the